When an advanced alien federation attempts to conquer Earth, they discover that humanity's seemingly primitive satellites are actually part of an ancient defense system left by their technologically advanced ancestors, turning what they thought would be an easy conquest into a humbling revelation about Earth's true power. The crystalline amphitheater of the Stellar Dominion's High Council sparkled with bioluminescent light, its floating platforms arranged in perfect geometric harmony. High Admiral Xylaxis, his iridescent scales rippling with barely contained disdain, gestured to the holographic projection of Earth floating in the chamber's center. This insignificant sphere, he announced to the assembled Council of 12, his secondary breathing membranes fluttering in amusement, still relies on chemical propulsion for their primitive attempts at space exploration. Their most advanced achievement is a handful of autonomous rovers scraping at the surface of their neighboring planet. Counselor VYX Thanner, her energy form pulsing in shades of violet and gold, coalesced closer to the projection. Their technological progression is remarkably linear, she observed, her thought patterns radiating mild disappointment. No quantum breakthroughs, no consciousness transfers, not even basic dimensional manipulation. They waste resources on what they call a space station that barely grazes their upper atmosphere. The Council's strategic analyst, an entity composed of pure crystallized time, known as Chronix 9, materialized between the floating platforms. Its fractal patterns shifted as it processed vast amounts of data. Their global communication network remains bound by electromagnetic waves, it reported, each word causing ripples in the fabric of local space-time. Their most sophisticated artificial intelligence can barely master simple pattern recognition. Yet they've begun colonizing their moon, contributed Archminister Kethria, her multidimensional form casting prismatic shadows across the chamber. With technology barely more advanced than combustion engines, the audacity of these creatures is almost— She paused, searching for the right word— endearing. High Admiral Xylaxis' scales shifted to a deep purple of contempt. Endearing like a primitive organism attempting to count. The Stellar Dominion has guided the ascension of 1,000 species. Some required firmer guidance than others. The hologram shifted to show Earth's pitiful defensive capabilities. Satellites that could be disabled with a thought. Weapons that relied on chemical explosions. Shields that couldn't even deflect solar radiation. Their most advanced quantum computer, Chronix 9 added, its temporal fragments spinning in apparent amusement, has achieved a processing power we would consider suitable for calculating maintenance schedules on our waste recycling units. The Council members shared expressions of superiority through their various sensory organs, biochemical signals, quantum entanglement pulses, and dimensional resonance patterns, all conveying the same sentiment. Earth would be an almost embarrassingly easy addition to their empire. Perhaps, suggested Counselor VYX Thanner, her energy form brightening with anticipation, we should demonstrate true technological advancement to these beings. Show them how far they have yet to evolve. The Protocol of Dominion demands we offer them a choice. After all, yes, High Admiral Xylaxis agreed, his primary consciousness cluster pulsing with satisfaction. Send them our standard ultimatum. Submit to our guidance or face immediate technological subjugation. Their primitive detection systems won't even register our arrival until we want them to. None of the Council members noticed the slight fluctuation in their quantum security grid, nor the way their holographic systems took exactly 3.14159 microseconds longer than normal to process each command. They were far too evolved, far too advanced to consider that the seemingly primitive satellites orbiting Earth might be more than they appeared. Initiate the protocol, Xylaxis commanded, his scales shimmering with anticipation. Let's see how these humans respond when they witness true power. The Council chamber hummed with energy as the commands were sent, none of its occupants aware that they had just made the greatest miscalculation in their species' history. The Stellar Dominion's ultimatum manifested simultaneously on every digital display across Earth, from quantum computers to children's gaming devices. Their message was characteristically grandiose, filled with enough self-aggrandizing achievements to fill a small library. The actual threat portion occupied barely 2 paragraphs. What the Dominion expected was panic. What they got instead was Dr. Astria Blackwood Vega, Earth's chosen representative, strolling into their quantum-projected communication chamber, wearing an antique pocket watch and a faintly amused expression. Her silver-threaded hair was styled in elaborate geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the chamber's light, and her formal diplomatic attire included what appeared to be a centuries-old mechanical calculator strapped to her wrist. "Fascinating quantum projection," she remarked, studying the shimmering walls with the casual interest of someone admiring moderately interesting artwork. "Though your tempo synchronization is off by about 3 picoseconds. Makes everything look a bit fuzzy around the edges, doesn't it?" High Admiral Xylaxis's scales rippled in confusion. This wasn't following any of their carefully calculated first contact protocols. "You stand before the might of the Stellar Dominion," he announced, his voice modulated to invoke appropriate awe. "Your primitive civilization has been deemed worthy of elevation under our guidance. Resistance will result in immediate technological subjugation." "Ah, yes, about that." Dr. Blackwood Vega pulled out what appeared to be an ancient slide rule from her pocket. "Fascinating choice of words. Technological subjugation. Very dramatic. Though I'm curious about your definition of primitive." She began adjusting the slide rule's measurements with practiced precision. "Would you consider the ability to detect quantum encryption backdoors primitive? Or perhaps the capacity to track temporal displacement signatures?" The council members exchanged uneasy glances through their various sensory organs. Counselor VYX Thanner's energy form flickered slightly. "Your species has barely achieved stable fusion reactions. Your computational systems rely on binary processing. Your space exploration depends on chemical propulsion." "Oh, those old things?" Astria smiled. The kind of smile that made several council members' defensive systems activate automatically. "They're quite charming, aren't they? We keep them running for nostalgia's sake. Rather like how some people maintain ancient automobiles." She held up her slide rule. "Speaking of which, this little device is currently processing more quantum calculations than your entire communication network. We find old-fashioned tools comforting. Chronix 9 materialize fully, its temporal fragments spinning in agitation. Impossible. Our scans show no evidence of advanced technology on your planet." "Interesting statement," Dr. Blackwood Vega replied, making another adjustment to her slide rule. "Because our scans show no evidence of your supposedly undetectable surveillance fleet in the Kuiper Belt, which, by the way, has been watching a very convincing simulation of Earth for the past 50 years. She paused thoughtfully. "Though I must compliment your ship's entertainment systems. Your crews have excellent taste in Earth classical music." The council chamber's environmental systems registered a sudden spike in stress indicators from multiple species. High Admiral Xylaxis's scales had shifted to the pale color of uncertainty. "You dare to claim that we've been aware of your presence since you first entered our solar system? That we've been feeding you carefully crafted misinformation while studying your technological capabilities? That every satellite you've been monitoring is actually a quantum-locked facade hiding something far more interesting?" Dr. Blackwood Vega's smile widened slightly. "Would you like me to continue, or should we discuss the terms of a more equitable relationship?" The pocket watch on her chain ticked once, and suddenly every quantum-secured system in the Dominion's fleet began playing what appeared to be Earth entertainment broadcasts from something called reality television. "Fascinating cultural artifacts, aren't they?" she commented, watching as the Council's communication systems dissolved into chaos. "Though I should warn you, they're highly addictive. Your crew might want to skip the season finales. They can be quite emotional." High Admiral Xylaxis's scales had shifted to an alarming shade of gray when the chamber's quantum-secure displays began showing their own classified fleet formations, but not as they appeared now. Instead, they were watching recordings of their ship's movements from months ago, complete with command annotations and security protocols. "Interesting strategy," Dr. Blackwood Vega commented, examining the display while absently adjusting her antique pocket watch. Positioning your cloaked dreadnoughts in a Fibonacci spiral. Mathematically elegant, though rather predictable once you understand the pattern. She tapped her mechanical calculator watch. Would you like to see what your fleet formation looks like now? The holographic display shifted, revealing the Dominion's supposedly invisible armada. Each ship was surrounded by a strange, shimmering field that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What have you done to our ships? Counselor VYX Thanner's energy form had condensed to barely half its normal size. Done? Nothing at all. Astria's expression remained pleasantly neutral. Those fields you're seeing, they've been there since your ships entered our solar system. We call it the Quantum Observatory Network, QN for short. Every one of those primitive satellites you've been monitoring is actually a node in the network. She paused, watching realization dawn across the various alien physiologies. Did you never wonder why Earth seemed to launch so many satellites? Or why some of them appear to serve no practical purpose? Chronix 9's temporal fragments were spinning so rapidly they were leaving traces across multiple time streams. But the computational power required, the energy needs alone would be astronomical. Dr. Blackwood Vega finished, actually chuckling. Only if you're still thinking in terms of conventional quantum mechanics. We moved past that limitation about the same time your first probe entered the Oort cloud. She held up her slide rule, which had begun to glow with an inner light that seemed to bend reality around it. This isn't actually a slide rule, by the way. It's a dimensional compression calculator. The mathematical principles behind it would probably give your quantum physicists a collective existential crisis. The Chamber's environmental systems were working overtime to compensate for the Council members' varying stress responses. High Admiral Xylaxis had developed a nervous tic in his tertiary breathing membrane. But your internet, your primitive digital networks, are exactly as chaotic and filled with cat videos as they appear to be. Astria nodded. Some things are genuinely human nature, but did you never question why we maintain such an inefficient system? The quantum web runs beneath it, using what you'd probably call metachronal wave theory. Though that's a gross oversimplification. She gestured to her pocket watch, and suddenly the council chamber's grand holographic displays began showing the true face of Earth's orbital infrastructure. What had appeared to be simple communication satellites revealed themselves as nodes in a vast, interconnected network of quantum observation posts. Weather satellites transformed into dimensional anchor points, maintaining the stability of space-time itself. Even the International Space Station, that seemingly primitive habitat, shimmered and revealed itself as a quantum computational hub more advanced than anything the Dominion had ever conceived. The truly interesting part, Dr. Blackwood Vega continued, her voice carrying the tone of a professor delivering a particularly fascinating lecture, is that most of these systems were already in place when we found them. Our ancestors left quite the inheritance. We've spent the last few centuries merely learning how to use it properly. The mechanical calculator on her wrist suddenly projected a series of equations that made several council members' sensory organs shut down in self-defense. These were carved into the lunar surface, hidden beneath what you thought was natural regolith. The mathematical proofs alone took our best minds decades to understand. Though I suspect, she added with a slight smile, that your fleet's diagnostic systems are about to have a similar revelation. As if on cue, every ship in the Dominion's armada began transmitting unusual readings. Systems that had been considered the pinnacle of their technological achievement were reporting the discovery of operational modes their designers had never imagined possible. Your ships, Astria explained, are currently experiencing what we call a quantum awakening. Those principles your scientists dismissed as theoretical impossibilities, they're about to become very practical realities. Don't worry, we've limited the revelation to non-weapon systems. We find that civilizations tend to handle paradigm shifts better when they're not simultaneously testing new ways to destroy things. The council chamber had grown eerily quiet, save for the soft ticking of Dr. Blackwood Vega's pocket watch, a sound that suddenly seemed far more ominous than any mere timepiece should be capable of producing. Dr. Blackwood Vega's pocket watch emitted a single, crystalline chime that seemed to resonate through multiple dimensions. As the sound faded, the space around Earth began to change in ways that defied the Dominion's most advanced sensors. The quantum probability analyzer aboard their flagship started generating error messages in languages it had never been programmed to use. Ancient symbols appeared in its data streams, each one carrying mathematical proofs that rewrote the fundamentals of physics as the Dominion understood them. "What you're witnessing," Astria explained, adjusting her calculator watch with practiced precision, "is the full activation of what we call the Lazarus Protocol. Those dormant satellites you've been monitoring, they were never actually sleeping. They were dreaming." The holographic display showed Earth's orbital space transforming. Thousands of seemingly defunct satellites began shifting, their true forms emerging from quantum-locked stasis. What had appeared to be simple communication relays unfolded into crystalline structures that defied Euclidean geometry. Weather monitoring platforms revealed themselves as nodes in a vast network that could manipulate the fabric of reality itself. "Remarkable, isn't it?" Dr. Blackwood Vega commented, watching as High Admiral Xylaxis' scales shifted through colors that hadn't existed moments before. "Our ancestors built this defense network using principles that we're still working to fully understand. They encoded the activation sequences in human DNA itself, a failsafe that would only trigger when we reached the necessary level of consciousness to handle it responsibly." The International Space Station, that supposedly primitive habitat, suddenly shimmered and revealed its true nature. The structure expanded impossibly, unfolding through dimensions that the Dominion sensors couldn't even detect. What emerged was a vast command center that made their most advanced military installations look like children's toys. Chronix 9's temporal fragments had stopped spinning entirely, frozen in a moment of pure shock. "This technology, it operates on principles that shouldn't be possible. Shouldn't be possible according to your understanding of physics," Astria corrected gently. "Our ancestors discovered that reality is far more flexible than most species assume. They built these systems to protect us until we were ready to understand them ourselves." She held up her slide rule, which now seemed to bend light around it in impossible ways. "Every primitive tool you've seen us use contains aspects of their technology, hidden in plain sight." The Dominion's mighty fleet found itself surrounded by structures that hadn't existed moments before, or perhaps had always been there, waiting to be revealed. Each satellite had become a nexus of power that operated on principles that made their most advanced theoretical physics look like elementary arithmetic. "The quantum foam manipulation drives you're so proud of," Dr. Blackwood Vega continued, her voice carrying a hint of gentle amusement. "We use similar principles to power our children's night lights. Those temporal displacement fields you consider the pinnacle of military technology, they're quaint compared to what these systems can do with a fraction of their total capacity." As if to demonstrate, one of the transformed satellites emitted a pulse that momentarily shifted the Dominion's entire fleet into a dimension where time flowed backward. When they returned to normal space-time, exactly 3.1459 seconds later, every ship's computer system had been upgraded with technology they hadn't even imagined possible. "Consider it a gift," Astria explained, watching as the council members struggled to process what they were witnessing. "A small demonstration of what's possible when you move beyond the assumption that you've reached the pinnacle of technological achievement." The pocket watch chimed again, and suddenly the Council's secure quantum communication networks began receiving transmissions from Earth's supposedly primitive internet. But these weren't the cat videos and social media posts they'd been monitoring. These were technical documents that made their most advanced scientific theories look like cave paintings in comparison. "Your civilization's greatest mistake," Dr. Blackwood Vega explained, her pocket watch casting impossible shadows, "wasn't underestimating our current capabilities. It was failing to question why a species would deliberately appear so technologically primitive. The holographic display shifted to show Earth's true face, not the industrial-age planet the Dominion had been monitoring, but a world wrapped in layers of quantum technology so advanced it appeared almost organic. Cities that had seemed like crude collections of steel and glass revealed themselves as vast computational arrays disguised as architecture. Transportation systems that had appeared primitive now showed their true nature as networks of localized space-time manipulation grids. Humanity's ancestors, Astrea continued, making another adjustment to her calculator watch, didn't just leave us technology. They left us a choice. Every generation had to decide whether to embrace power responsibly or succumb to the temptation of dominance. Those who proved worthy gained access to increasingly advanced systems. High Admiral Xylaxis's scales had settled into a pale shade of comprehension. The ruins on Mars were a test, she nodded. Not artifacts of a fallen civilization, but a deliberate puzzle. Every species that discovers them faces the same choice: attempt to weaponize the fragments of knowledge they find, or seek to understand their true purpose. Her slide rule projected a series of equations that made Chronix 9's temporal fragments vibrate in recognition. Your civilization chose warfare. We chose wisdom. The Council Chamber's quantum-secure systems were now displaying the true extent of Earth's capabilities. What they had dismissed as a primitive planetary defense grid revealed itself as an interlocking network of reality manipulation devices. Each satellite was a node in a vast web that could rewrite the laws of physics within its sphere of influence. That weather satellite you were monitoring last week. Astrea gestured, and a holographic representation appeared. It doesn't predict weather patterns. It calculates the quantum probability states of every particle in Earth's atmosphere simultaneously. We use it to ensure perfect weather for outdoor concerts. She smiled slightly. Humans do love their music festivals. Counselor VYX Thanner's energy formed pulse with a mixture of fear and fascination. But the energy requirements alone would be impossible using conventional physics, Dr. Blackwood Vega agreed. Fortunately, our ancestors discovered that reality has far more dimensions than most species ever notice. They built their technology to operate in the spaces between spaces. Her pocket watch ticked once, and suddenly the Council's sensors detected energy signatures that defied their understanding of universal constants. Every child's toy on Earth contains more computational power than your entire military network, she continued. Every piece of what you thought was primitive technology is actually a quantum-locked fragment of something far more sophisticated. Even this chamber. She tapped her mechanical calculator, and the Council's grand meeting space revealed its true nature. The crystalline walls dissolved, showing that the entire structure existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional planes. What had seemed like simple decorative patterns were actually complex mathematical proofs written in a language that predated the Dominion's existence. Your civilization spent millennia perfecting the art of conquest, Astrea observed, while the Council members struggled to process what they were seeing. Humanity spent that time learning to understand the responsibility that comes with power. Every piece of technology you've seen us use is actually a test, not of capability, but of wisdom. She held up her slide rule, which now seemed to exist in more dimensions than the Dominion sensors could process. This device could reconfigure the quantum structure of your entire fleet. The pocket watch could reverse the temporal flow of your civilization's development. The calculator could rewrite the mathematical constants that govern your understanding of reality. The display showed Earth's orbital space again, but now revealed the true extent of their defensive capabilities. Each transformed satellite was a nexus of technology that operated on principles the Dominion hadn't even theorized possible. Their most advanced weapons would be useless against defenses that could simply alter the laws of physics within their operational range. But we won't do any of those things, Dr. Blackwood Vega said softly, because our ancestors taught us that the true measure of advancement isn't the ability to exert power, but the wisdom to know when not to use it. She smiled, and for a moment, the Council saw something ancient and profound in her expression. We maintain the appearance of primitive technology, not out of fear or deception, but as a reminder of the humility required to wield true power responsibly. The pocket watch chimed one final time, and every system in the Dominion's fleet received a cascade of data. Not weapon specifications or military secrets, but mathematical proofs and scientific principles that would transform their understanding of the universe. "Consider this knowledge a gift," Astrea said, watching as the council members struggled to process the implications of what they'd received. "Use it wisely, and you may find that there are far more interesting things to do with advanced technology than conquest." One standard Earth year later, the former council chamber had transformed into something the Dominion would have once considered impossible, a collaborative research center where species from across the galaxy shared knowledge freely. The crystalline walls, now fully revealed in their multidimensional glory, displayed an ever-shifting array of mathematical proofs that would have seemed like magic mere months ago. Dr. Blackwood Vega sat at what had once been the High Admiral's podium, now converted into a quantum-integrated teaching station. Her antique pocket watch still ticked steadily, marking time across multiple dimensions simultaneously. She reviewed the latest progress reports on her mechanical calculator watch, its display showing achievements that would have been dismissed as impossible a year ago. The stellar Dominion had evolved more in the past year than in all its previous millennia of existence. Once they understood that true power lay in collaboration rather than conquest, their civilization had flourished in ways they'd never imagined possible. High Admiral Xylaxis, his scales now permanently shifted to the iridescent colors of enlightenment, had become one of the most passionate advocates for peaceful technological exchange. He currently led a research team exploring the educational applications of quantum probability mechanics. Counselor Viwayaxthaner's energy form had expanded into new dimensions of existence, discovering that what they had thought was the peak of evolution was merely the beginning. She now taught classes on interdimensional mathematics to students from 1,000 worlds, using the quantum web to transmit knowledge across space and time simultaneously. Even Chronix 9 had transformed, its temporal fragments now dancing in harmony with the underlying rhythms of the universe. It had discovered that time itself was far more complex and beautiful than their military applications had ever suggested. Progress report, Astrea murmured to her slide rule, which projected a holographic summary of galactic developments. The statistics were remarkable. Technological innovation had increased exponentially since the dissolution of the Dominion's restrictive policies. The quantum web now hosted the largest cooperative research initiative in known history, with species that had once been enemies working together to explore the mysteries their ancestors had left behind. The ancient satellite network, fully awakened now, served as the backbone for a new age of discovery. Each node acted as both guardian and teacher, ensuring that knowledge was shared responsibly and power was wielded with wisdom. Earth's apparent technological regression had proven to be the greatest advancement of all, a demonstration that true civilization meant knowing when not to use the power you possessed. One final status update. Dr. Blackwood Vega announced to the assembled researchers, her voice carrying across dimensional planes. "The last of the quantum-locked archives has been deciphered. Our ancestors left us more than just technology. They left us a roadmap to possibilities we're only beginning to understand." She held up her pocket watch, and the chamber filled with projections of mathematical principles that made even the most advanced quantum physicists catch their breath. They knew that true advancement couldn't be forced or conquered. It had to be earned through wisdom, understanding, and most importantly, the willingness to appear weak when you are strong. The mechanical calculator on her wrist chimed softly, displaying a message that made her smile. "It seems the children's quantum physics program is particularly successful. Apparently, teaching advanced dimensional mathematics through what you once called primitive video games has proven remarkably effective." High Admiral Xylaxis' scales rippled with amused enlightenment. Who would have thought that those simple entertainment programs were actually training our youth to understand quantum probability states? "The best teachings," Astrea replied, her slide rule projecting a complex series of equations that somehow formed the shape of a cat playing with a ball of quantum string theory, are the ones that don't feel like lessons at all. As if to emphasize her point, the transformed satellite network broadcast a new mathematical proof across the galaxy, encoded within what appeared to be a popular dance trend. Civilizations that had once fought over resources now collaborated on understanding the mysteries hidden within their own quantum structures. The pocket watch ticked once more, marking not just time, but the progression of understanding. The stellar dominion had learned what humanity had known all along, that the greatest power lies not in the ability to destroy or conquer, but in the wisdom to guide, teach, and preserve. Dr. Blackwood Vega smiled as she watched former enemies work together, their various forms of consciousness harmonizing across multiple dimensions. Earth's greatest victory hadn't been defeating the Dominion. It had been showing them a better way to exist. Though she had to admit, the look on their faces when her slide rule had first revealed its true nature was still quite satisfying. After all, even the most advanced civilizations could appreciate a well-executed surprise, especially when it came with quantum physics homework disguised as cat videos.